Yep. Don't know why.
It's a mystery. There we go.
Mhm,
Good morning, fellow Toastmasters and all of you potential Toastmasters out there.
mhm.
Welcome to the show. This is Wake Up with Toastmasters. I am your co-host and your program quality director, Ken Richardson. And with me is the lovely Division D director.
Dee,
Good
I
morning,
did it.
Jennifer.
Good morning, Ken. How are you doing today?
Just wonderful. It's another wonderful day in the neighborhood. Is that the saying?
The birds
I,
are chirping, the sun
The
is
birds are
rising.
chirping. And I'm kind of enjoying I'm an early riser by nature. I'm usually
Mhm.
up by 4:30, 5 o'clock every morning. I know that's been since I was in the military. I've
Mhm.
never quite gotten over that. I've always been an early riser. But I'm kind of enjoying these cool, crisp mornings. It's different. I was getting tired of the triple digits, so so it's going pretty well.
Well, I am not one that likes the cold. I do like the warmth instead. The other day, I had my air down because I was cooking, and of course, I was heating up, and I come in and I'm like, why is it so cold in here? I thought the door was open. It was so cold in my house. Do
Well,
not like that.
I can relate. My daughter lives in Sun Valley, Idaho, because she
Mhm.
loves skiing and snowboarding and all of that. She's really an outdoorsy person. And I've visited her in the wintertime, and boy, lots of snow, lots of cold. So I'm
Yeah.
with you. I mean, I like it, but only up to a point.
Yeah. I have a friend that lives up there too, and she's always showing me pictures for snowfall. Just like, oh,
Yeah.
I could do without that.
Yeah. It's first snowfall. It's 14 degrees outside. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to put the wood in. Shows me all the wood that she has. It's just, I could not live like that.
That elevation gets to me. It's,
Yeah.
way up in the mountains. And I mean, I enjoy visiting, but it's still a challenge. So,
Yeah.
well, today we're going to talk about leadership. And before we signed on, we were talking about the fact that the term leadership is kind of hard to get your arms around. It's like trying to explore an elephant with a blindfold. It's a big amorphous kind of mass. And
Mhm.
I went to business school. I have a master's degree in business administration,
Oh.
and we learned about what leadership is, what management is.
Mhm.
And over the years, I think I've read a gazillion books on leadership, and I've attended seminars. Yeah, and there's
All of
always
my
something.
books.
Well, and it's always something slightly different, or there's always an angle that you can focus on. How would you define leadership, Jennifer?
I would think that leadership is one that gives the vision and the direction, and I would then say with the hopes of people to follow, and also you have to convince, even though you're sharing your vision, you also have to convince them that this is the correct vision and to follow that direction. So,
Yes, exactly. I think that's correct. I
mhm.
remember one professor I had who said that leadership is, sharing your vision, your goals, and then getting out of the way.
Yeah.
Well, I think,
That is in my career that we have our vision, but we also have to motivate them to also have a vision to be
mm,
able to continue and to grow and to get more orders.
I'm so glad you talked about motivation a little bit, because we're gonna talk about that some today. I have this PowerPoint. There's a shock. I never have a PowerPoint.
Shocking.
And this is one that I found. I think it was on the TI website, because it's not one that I did personally, but I
Mhm.
found intriguing because it takes a look at some of the tools leaders need for success, and one of them is motivation. So I'm going to share my screen. and we'll just dive right in.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay, so everybody can see that all right, I think.
Yes.
I'm checking our Facebook feed. Looks like it's
I'm looking as well.
okay, good. Looks good, right?
Yep.
Okay. So this session today is going to be about tools for success. And there are, I don't know, probably hundreds of tools that you could look at and examine and say, well, this will help a leader to succeed and their organization. So we're going to take a look at this today.
Toastmasters International, where leaders are made.
Exactly. That's our tagline, isn't it?
Yes.
So here's what leadership success is built on many things. But some of the cornerstones we're going to discuss today include motivation, as you were talking about, motivating yourself and motivating others. We're going to talk about understanding the needs of your team. Delegation, that's an important aspect of leadership. And that's something I have a little, I have confessed, I'm a little bit of a control freak. So I have to really let go sometimes, and that can be challenging for me.
That is very challenging because of the fact that you know that you can do it. But then when you look at everything that you have to do, you have to get rid of something,
Yes.
Delegate something.
Yes, I've been working on that for years and trying to get better at it. So it's still like a work in progress.
I was
And
going to say
it.
it must be a work in progress because
It
I
is a
know
work
what
in
you
progress.
do.
Yeah. And then, of course, another component is successful coaching. So motivating team members, we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to add in motivating yourself, because that's not always easy either.
No.
Understanding what your team members need. What is it? Why are they in this particular situation? Why do they need to follow you? What do they need to get from you as their leader? Then we talk some more about delegating. I'll give you some tips on how you can analyze a situation and determine what you can and cannot delegate, and then coaching the team members. So let's get started with motivation. Now, this is a slide that looks at two aspects of motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic. And it's funny, when we look at this, we'll talk about some of these bullet points and whether or not they're the right bullet points. But I remember another professor that I had in graduate school who said to me, you can't motivate anybody.
Yeah.
What? What do you mean I can't motivate anybody? He said, all motivation is intrinsic, comes from within. All you can do is provide the environment that allows that intrinsic motivation to express itself. I don't know. Do you think that's right?
That is not right. I truly believe that there are other ways that people are inspired to do certain things because, and money is not necessarily always the inspiration, right? So what is it that makes them want to do what they want, that they need to do?
Excellent. Pardon me. And I noticed when I was in college and graduate school, it was not uncommon for professors to contradict one another.
Yes. It's an opinion.
Yeah, some things that you can rely, on. They are fact. They're demonstrably provable outside of any other considerations, and others are clearly opinion. And I have some opinions about these bullet points. So let's look first at the intrinsic items on this particular list, defined as motivation. Autonomy, having a certain amount of control over your destiny. Now, this is something that I read many times as a determining factor for employee or followers' happiness, I guess you could say.
Yep.
Is having a certain amount of autonomy over what they can do. What do you think? Does that sound right on?
That's right on, because people want that independence and be able to make their own decisions in their work area for me, it's when I look at this, it's about work. So in their work area. Yes.
Well, I think that's a good model to use, because even though we're volunteers and Toastmasters is, a membership type of organization, we can look at it in that framework and understand that there are certain tasks we have to do. And I recall when I was much younger, I worked in a factory, believe it or not, outside in South Haven, Michigan. I lived there for a couple of years. And the factory I worked made chrome parts for automobiles, shipped them to Detroit.
That's another shocking, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly.
You're in Michigan.
Chrome? What is that? But it's so funny because the work was, you got paid by the number of pieces. And I remember specifically making window trim that went around. And this was, I think, it was going to a Dodge Ram pickup truck or something. But you're so controlled by that environment, because how much you earned that day depended on how many pieces you made. And so you had very little autonomy. And autonomy to me is important because, as we talked, the leader expresses the vision, and then you leave it up to your followers to determine how best to carry it out. Yes. That is what autonomy means to me. So you have some control. Yep. Belonging. I think that's a big, powerful motivator. What do you think?
It is definitely a big, powerful motivator, because we come from everybody's coming from a different background. And when you are, especially in my environment, we're together basically 10 hours. And if you don't have that sense of belonging, then you will definitely try to earn that belonging. And it's always a strive that people are doing because they want to belong. And it would be just as simple as to accept someone too, so that they can belong. But when you are in a group of 10 to 15 people, you're basically a tribe, and you don't want to be that outcast in that tribe.
Very good. I agree. And then curiosity is another one that I think is a very powerful motivator, because you want to understand how things work, or you want to understand how best to implement a given plan. Love, I'm not quite sure how that fits in there. I guess you could say
love your job, love your people.
There you go. Love your job, love your people. Of course, learning is part of that. Mastery, being good at what you do, and then creating some meaning in your life. I think those are all very good intrinsic motivational factors.
Yes.
Now, I do have to disagree with some of these extrinsic. For example, it says fear of failure and fear of punishment. I think those are intrinsic, not extrinsic. What do you think?
I think it would be part of the learning and part of the belonging as well, because you're always trying to how do you want to say that? You're always trying to be better, and you're always trying to belong. So I think that when you're fearing failure, it's the belonging of how somebody's looking at you. And then also the fear of punishment. What's the punishment? Is the punishment that you're going to get fired, or is the punishment that you're going to be outcasted? What is that punishment? So I actually think that's an intrinsic feature as well, because that's not a motivation.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Now, some of these other things, recognition in the form of, getting a little badge or a gold star, getting money or points or rewards. Yes, I can see those as extrinsic, because they are bestowed upon you when you achieve certain milestones. Whereas intrinsic, it all comes from within.
Correct. And those are the basic, like Anthony Robbins would say, the basic human desires, right? To belong, to love, and you need food and water.
Well, we're going to talk in a minute about you're moving into Asimov's hierarchy of needs. We're going to talk about Toastmasters hierarchy of needs a little bit. But first,
I
we'll look
haven't seen this PowerPoint if anybody's wondering, so.
at. That's true. You haven't. I didn't. If I had been just a little bit more motivated last night, I would have thought, oh, I need to send this to Jennifer. But anyway, the 5 principles of motivation. First, you have to understand what motivates each person on your team,
Correct.
because we all are not motivated by the same thing. As you mentioned earlier, you talked about money. Well,
Yep.
money is a good motivator, but it doesn't always work for everyone. What is your primary motivator, for example?
Oh, my motivation is money.
That's great. I think that's
Yes.
great. I think all of us have, as part of our hierarchy of motivation, one of those, of course, is money. We need that to
Yes.
survive. What else do you think is a motivator for you personally?
I think the recognition as well is probably high as money.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. Being recognized by your peers for what you do. I think that's great.
Correct.
You have to focus on the benefits to the individual. This is something that I like to talk about with my fellow Toastmasters when I hear things like, I just can't get into pathways. It's just not my thing. I'm done, particularly maybe sometimes older folks, more senior Toastmasters, I should say. And I like to talk about with them. Well, let's explore that a little bit. Let's focus on what the benefits to you are in pathways, and why it's something you should get more involved in and get over that initial reluctance. So exploring benefits. Make your expectations clear. Don't you hate it when a boss, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but it has happened to me in my lengthy career, where the boss will give you some assignment, but without a clear understanding of expectations. And then the boss comes back and said, well, that's not what I wanted you to do. What? If you don't make those expectations clear, that means they could be subject to misunderstanding.
Correct.
So
on that, with the little sub notes would be, how does an individual learn? Does that person learn by visual, listening, taking notes? So how do you make those expectations clear?
Exactly. So it's all about communicating, isn't it?
Correct.
We're even though we're talking about leadership, leadership entails communication.
Yep.
And then, of course, we talked about recognizing members, and be a leader yourself. Be cognizant of the principles of motivation and understanding the needs of your team. Speaking of needs, this is one of the other pillars of leadership, or tools of leadership, we want to talk about. And look at this. Look what I found.
All about Toastmasters.
Yes, I love this. Asimov's hierarchy of needs, of course, deals with things like food, shelter, clothing, love, acceptance, etc. This is the Toastmasters hierarchy of needs. And if you look at the very basics, it's overcoming the fear of public speaking. And I think most people, or many people, join Toastmasters as part of that. That's part of their need, is to overcome that fear. Then there's a safety need. And this is what I love about Toastmasters, to be in a safe, supportive club environment. Because I have had people leave Toastmasters, and I've talked to them about it, and they did not feel that supportive. And I think that's something that club leaders need to really think about and make sure that their club is providing that, and it hasn't evolved into like a clique of just the privileged few.
Correct. The same suspects, right? The usual suspects. So, and it can get cliquey, but one of the things that I liked about it when I first went into Valley Voices and Vices is that when you're new, that they make you feel welcome. And so it's unclickish. And it's definitely important to remember that as you continue into Toastmasters and you do get comfortable in your group, that when there's somebody that comes in, you are going to make them feel as welcome as you did when you first arrived.
Well said. I couldn't agree more. The next hierarchy is social. And this one I find very important to me because, I've been in Toastmasters for 15 years. I'm a distinguished Toastmaster. I've served in club and district leadership, and people say to me, well, why do you stay in? I say, well, there's two reasons. One, lifelong learning is what Toastmasters provide, but there's also a social component, lifelong friends that I've made, both within my home club and outside of my home club.
I know.
So the social aspect is important. The next is esteem, being recognized for a fantastic speech. And that's what got me outside my club, really, was the speech contest. I love speech contests. Although I can't compete now because I'm program quality director. I just love that. I love winning those. I love the competitive nature. How about you? Have you competed?
I have competed twice. I was horrible, but I competed because I was voluntold.
Well, I wouldn't feel bad because all of us the first time are not necessarily at our peak. That's how we learn, is by continuing to compete and, staying in the game, so to speak. And then, of course, the top of the pyramid is self-actualization, just like in Asimov's hierarchy of needs. The realization that you have already overcome your fear, that you have confidence in yourself and your ability. So what do you think of this hierarchy of needs? Does it ring true?
I kind of like it. I think that it should be something that is always placed in maybe our publications. So when we do our contest, that we should have that out. So maybe, I don't know, I need to find that as well.
I will send you this PowerPoint after we sign off. And to anyone who wants it, they can just shoot me an email, krichardson@lvnv.gmail, and I'll be happy to share it with you.
Yeah, I think it should be in our brochures.
I like that. Okay, let's talk a minute about delegation. So we've talked about motivations and needs, delegation. And as I mentioned, this is a harder aspect for me to pass it on. So we're going to get some tips here.
Yes.
First of all,
let's
learn about delegation. I know it can help me. I just have to, it's funny. Sometimes we know what's good for us and we don't do it.
Yes.
So you have to internalize what you're learning and then apply it. Absolutely. So first thing in delegation is you have to decide, what are you going to delegate and what are you going to focus your efforts on? Who are you going to delegate the task to? Who's going to do that task? That's the second aspect. So you decide, here's what I want to delegate. Now, who's the best person to do this? So if you're, for example, a contest chair, since we have contests coming up, one thing you need to delegate is, the judging and the raffle. You need to select someone. Yes, select the right people to fill those roles and then kind of get out of their way. Assign responsibility, grant authority. I don't know if this has ever happened to you in the real world of work world, where you've been given a task with no real authority to ensure that it gets carried out. You have to constantly go back to your supervisor and say, so-and-so is doing XYZ and that's blocking. So I don't have the authority to overrule their decision. So that's another thing. And then establish accountability. That's vitally important, because when you give a task to someone on your team, whether it's at the workplace or whether it's in the volunteer organization like Toastmasters, there has to be accountability, because without it, nothing gets done. And I've been in that situation. I don't know if you have, where I was expecting someone to do a given task and they didn't deliver.
And how do you hold them accountable, and how do you, uh, how do I want to say it? How do you hold them accountable, and how do you gently, this is again communication, say, well, it wasn't done correct, right?
Well, and it's especially challenging, I think, in a voluntary organization. If you are a supervisor in the world of work,
Mhm.
then you have a little bit more oomph behind it. So
Correct.
when you delegate something to someone who is on your team or who may be,
Anita, yeah, Anita Della Croce had a panel that I was on a couple of times last year about the art of delegation. And that's, I think, number 4, to grant the authority. That's really important because of the fact that when somebody gives you a task but it's somebody who's higher up, but do you really have that authority to carry it out the way it needs to be carried out?
I agree with you. This is so there's some great lessons here that we've learned, right?
Mm-hmm.
So finally, let's talk about coaching. There are 4 steps according to Toastmasters for successful coaching. And this can apply to, a team setting or even a club setting. So first of all, identify and define goals. Absolutely. If you are a club coach, or even if you are coaching your executive team within the club setting on the executive committee, you have to identify and define goals. This is one thing that I like. We're going to end this with talking about briefly the club success plan, because it's a perfect model that incorporates many of the tools we've been talking about, because there's got to be motivation, there needs to be delegation, there needs to be an understanding of what our club members' needs are and what motivates them, and then coaching. So we need goals.
And measurements too.
Yes, and measurements. And this is the thing we often leave out: strategies to reach those goals. We assume, I think, as leaders, I'm guilty of this, so maybe I'm projecting unintentionally, but when we set a goal, we assume that our team gets it, they understand, and they know how to achieve it. But that isn't always the case. We may need to talk about, well, what strategies do we need to implement to achieve this goal? For example, the membership goal in the DCP, 8 members over the course of a year. Well, what strategies are we going to enact? What's our plan for reaching those goals? Are we going to have an open house? Are we going to have a speech craft? Are we going to
go door
canvas?
knocking?
Well, yeah, exactly. Are we going to knock on doors? So we need to do that. And establish a timeline, and I would say recognize and celebrate milestones to measure our progress. And if you look at the DCP on the TI website, you can tell exactly where your club is. And when a new goal is reached, let's celebrate. Let's have a party. It doesn't have to be an elaborate party. It can be simply, hey, I want to recognize Jennifer Smith, who completed her level 3, and that moved us closer to becoming President's Distinguished.
Yep.
There you go. Follow up on the goals. This is another thing that can sometimes be lost in the shuffle. We set goals and then we forget. We don't follow up. And it's, before we know it, the year is over and we're like, oh, gosh, I didn't follow up on this. So nothing happened.
Yeah, that's Maria is going to do that with the members. You said you would give us these levels. How are you working on it? What's going on? Just as memorialize what we committed to.
I love Maria. She's great.
Yes.
At doing those kinds of things. So please tell her I said hello. So finally, we're going to wrap up here and something that embodies a lot of what we've been talking about, and that's the Distinguished Club Program and Club Success Plan. If you go back to think about the things we've articulated through this discussion today, motivating, that's part of it, understanding the needs of your constituents, in this case, your members, doing a good job coaching and delegating. All of that can be used to develop your club success plan. And it is a great model because you have the Toastmasters framework in which to flesh out that plan. And then that skill and everything we've talked about is transferable into real life.
The real world.
The real world. So, so what do you think? Do you think that we've this hits on it? You know, leadership, as I said, is such a broad topic. There's so many things you could talk about. But do you think this encapsulates some of the things that are important for our Toastmaster clubs to learn?
You know, I really love that you did this presentation, and it does definitely identify what Toastmasters is all about. And one of the biggest things of what Toastmasters is all about is that you're not alone, because there's resources, there's tools to be able to help you through what you're looking for, what your goals are in the Toastmasters program.
Excellent. Yes, I agree with you 100%. And you know, one of the things that I found as I talked to particularly newer members, or even some who've been in clubs for a while, is they don't take advantage of the resources that are there. They haven't explored the website. I mean, that's where I found this. I can't tell you exactly where it was. And it wasn't recently, so you may not be able to find it, but I'll share it with you. Anyway, I want to thank you, Jennifer, for joining me today. We are about out of time, but I do want to take a moment to encourage folks. We're starting round 2 of club leadership training.
Yes.
So we're going to go back to the TLI. A couple of things coming up. We have the early bird TLI on December 3rd. That's a Saturday starting at 9 a.m. And that's for people who have already received the basic training as a club officer, and they're going to be continuing in that role. As you know, club officer training occurs every 6 months because we have many clubs where they elect officers every 6 months, and some clubs that elect them once a year. So if you've already been serving in an officer role and you've had that basic training, early bird TLI is for you. It's a slightly different format, and that's going to occur on December 3rd. Then next year, can you believe we're almost into 2023? I know, as I was working on the schedule, I was like, oh my goodness. But on January 7th, 2023, we will have a online TLI it's going to be the basic stuff, a couple of educational programs. Kay Collis is going to talk about the benefits of leadership. So that'll be interesting.
I love Kay. Hi, Kay.
Yes.
I know it's too early.
I don't think Kay gets up this early.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's going to be a full-blown online TLI, and that's going to be on January 7th. And then finally, we're going to do an in-person TLI on the 21st of January, which is also a Saturday. It's going to be pretty much an all-day event at the East Las Vegas Library. Nice. So we'll have a couple of breakout rooms. We'll have some educationals, and I think it'll be a wonderful event. And so I hope everyone will come. It's free, of course.
Yes.
And if you have any questions, get in touch with me. K Richardson, LVNB @gmail.com. So it's like Ken Richardson, Las Vegas, Nevada. That's with the LVNB. So anyway, anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap up here, Jennifer?
I think we need to wrap up. I got to get going, but
okay, my friend.
Nothing else.
Thank you so much for being part of this today, and thanks everyone for sitting in, or if you're watching later, thank you for taking a look at our program. Have a great day, everyone.